So hi guys, this is Fab. I'm the Wellbeing and Equality Officer, and I'm joined by Loran, our VP for Wellbeing and Equality. And today we are taking over the Student Experience podcast to talk about intersectionality and diversity in the college. So hey Lauren, how are you?
Hi, Fav.
So to start, Lauren, could you explain to us what it is intersectionality?
Intersectionality is the interconnectedness or overlapping of different social categories and social groups, so race, ethnicity, ability, sexuality, that all overlap and come together and create like a heightened level and different multifaceted levels of discrimination. So for example, if a black woman faces a different type of discrimination to a white woman, that's intersectionality, and she faces a different level of discrimination because of that. You know, if you're in a wheelchair and Muslim, you would face a completely different type of discrimination because of those two identities and the way they intersect. So I think what's important is that while intersectionality is about celebrating different and diverse identities, it's also about recognizing the oppression that comes with these overlapping identities and how people who have these different identities walk through life differently and have different experiences because of that.
So is intersectionality only a problem when it comes to social interracial and social discrimination?
No, so it's not just like when people interact socially that intersectionality is a problem. Like obviously you would have different worldviews if you have these multiple identities, like people from different countries and of different ethnicities, or people of different sexualities or races would obviously on a social level have differences. But what's really important is that we need to consider these differences at a political and structural level too. Like, do we consider intersectionality in the workplace, in our schools and universities, in our political movements, in the media, in our healthcare systems? Like, do we recognize that there are people who have these multiple overlapping identities and that they face different types of discrimination because of that? So I think one thing, Fab, that I wanted to ask you is, why do you think intersectionality, or for people who are confused about it, just in simple terms, why do you think diversity and inclusion actually matters?
Yeah, I think because nowadays we live in a so diverse world. Everybody is completely different from each other, and I think we don't need to believe in they what they think or uh, agree with what they do. But I think we have to respect each other, and that's why I think it's important for us to live in peace. You know. Get along with each other, you know, with everybody as a community.
Yes, yeah, we have to coexist. Like, I think when people think of a community, they often, like when you learn in school a community, they'll say, okay, people with the same values, they often come from the same place. And that was true in like 100 years ago. That's how communities form. But now in communities, that's communities in colleges and work. And you aren't going to have people with the same identity. You're going to have people with all these little personal identities overlapping. And yeah, I completely agree with you. The coexisting, and not just coexisting, but encouraging like this kind of diversity is really important, especially in the world we live in today. I think another part of it is not just the social part, but the political level. Like when we don't think about intersectionality, when we don't think about diversity on this level, we leave people behind. So like a really interesting movement that I was learning about was the first wave feminist movement, and that was like largely started in the United States, and it was when women were first fighting for voting rights and things like that. And I mean, it was a great movement and like hugely necessary, but it left a whole clump of people behind, because in first wave feminism it was mostly about white, able-bodied cis women fighting for their own rights, but completely forgetting, you know, the oppression faced by ethnic minorities and the struggles of people of color. And I think if you're confused about intersectionality, if you think about that example, you know, take all the textbook stuff away, I think that explains perfectly what intersectionality is and the difference of being aware of it and not being aware of it.
Mm-hmm. And people get, when they see this word intersectionality,
Yeah.
they are, oh my god, what's that?
Yeah.
But it's basically, guys, it's simple. It's all everything related with diversity and inclusion. So yeah, that's basically it.
I wanted to ask as well, Fab, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any personal experience with discrimination?
Yeah, so I have a few experiences, mostly when I was a kid, because I'm gay, and then I wasn't feeling. I studied in a religious school, was led by nuns, and then like the kids, they noticed that I was a little bit different from then, and then they used to like exclude me from from like everything. That I didn't have many friends, so I think this affected me today.
Yeah.
That's why I think sometimes I'm a little bit shy,
Mm.
and sometimes I feel like that I have the impression that the person is not accepting me, but it's actually not like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think this had a lot of influence on
Yeah.
me and what
So
I am now. But I'm improving. I improved much more. When I was a teenager, I was completely like, I couldn't even speak in a
Aw.
podcast.
Well,
But
look at
now
you.
look at me, yeah. And like nowadays, like if I'm with somebody, with a guy like holding hands, sometimes I notice like some people like looking
Yeah.
differently, or even some comments sometimes
So it
like
affects the way you move through life still.
yeah. Yeah, that's basically my experience. And
So, for your example, if people are still confused about intersectionality, we would say that your two identities that overlap, especially being an island, is that you have a different nationality
exactly.
and that you identify as gay, so your sexual orientation. And those two overlapping things make you an intersexual individual.
Yeah,
So I think maybe that also helps.
yeah,
You know,
it's a
and
perfect example. Yeah.
and maybe for me being a woman and also being of a different nationality, or it could be that I'm a different religion, whatever it is, those two things would overlap and make me identify as an intersexual individual. And obviously we move through lives different. How I've moved through my life is completely different how you've moved through your life, and the things we faced or experienced are very different because of that. So I think that's a good way to explain it and give people context of that.
Yeah. And also, I remembered one time, because I'm Catholic, and one time here in Ireland, I was living with other people. They didn't have like a religion, and when I said that I was Catholic, then I usually go to church every Sunday, and when they told I told them that I was going to church, they were like judging me.
Yeah.
And then they were like, they were actually drinking, and then they were like, oh, you should drink, oh, you don't drink, you're a Catholic. Then I felt like a little bit awkward.
Yeah. And you felt socially a bit out of place.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the thing, is like here and there we have these little social interactions where maybe we experience these things, and you can shrug them off. But what happens when it extends into the political realm? What happens when policymakers overlook intersectional people? What happens when schools, universities, businesses forget that individuals have these different experiences, and it gets blown up onto a structural level where it's not just a little comment, it actually affects the way that you live your life. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, like, what do you think is the solution? How can we try and improve the experience of intersectional individuals in college, in business, and socially?
I think one important thing is information.
Yeah.
Information, I think, is key. When you inform people, when you explain to them, like
having workshops on unconscious bias or something like that.
Yeah. I think this would help to improve, to get to a solution.
Yeah.
Not a complete solution, but like people be aware what they should do or not to do.
So you think the education comes first?
Yeah.
And then the change in behavior and at a structure level comes second?
Yeah. I in my point of view, I think that's it. We need to inform first for people to understand.
And do you think that only people who have these intersecting identities, like, do you think only black women or gay people of a different ethnicity should be able to speak about intersectionality, or do you think it's something that everyone should be able to chat about openly and have a conversation about?
Yeah, I think everyone should have like a bit of knowledge to talk about that, because I think nowadays everybody's so diverse, and they interact with people, diverse people. So I think everybody like should
everyone should have the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Not only like,
so it's not off limits.
yeah.
Everyone should be, obviously they should speak about it with information. Obviously not everyone can go
Yeah,
around,
exactly. Yeah,
but
yeah.
every informed person should feel open and comfortable enough speaking about it and learning from each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And you, what do you think?
I agree on an individual level, like being receptive to training and being educated, because you can offer as much as you want. If you're not receptive to learning, it's not going to go in. I also think, like, if we move to like a business and college level and stuff, things like disability accessibility is a huge thing, not just in our buildings, but let's say if you design a website or your marketing promotions, all of that could be, disability friendly. You could have things like in the workplace, like training courses and stuff that account for intersectional individuals. Like, let's say you have, like, in your company, training programs for black women to empower them to take up leadership positions, so that in your organization you're actually representative of the population of your organization and you have intersectional people in positions of power. In your marketing, in the media, how are you as an organization, whether it's a college, a business, whatever it is, what do you portray your identity to be? Do you have intersectional individuals featuring in your marketing and promotions, or is it just a cookie cutter person that you have every time? So I think that kind of stuff is really important. And then finally, just like, we don't have control over this, but in an ideal world, policymakers, they would consult intersectional individuals before making decisions that affect them. Like, hugely, like, I don't know how it is, but in South Africa, like, gender-based violence is a huge issue, and largely against black women. Black women are statistically suffer more from gender-based violence than white women. And we have politicians who are making these promises about, like, the things they will do to stop gender-based violence, the programs they'll run, the education programs they'll run, and they'll increase, like, lockdown on people who obviously, like, break the rules and do partake in gender-based violence. But no one ever consulted any group of black women and said, how has this affected you? What can we do to help you? Like, what exactly would help you? What can we put in place that's going to make you feel empowered, going to make you feel safe? And this stuff trickles down. Obviously, if you don't feel safe at home, then you don't go to work and feel safe at work. And, it's all interlinked. So I think anything is that policymakers first need to start on the ground level and actually consult the intersectional individuals that their policies affect,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe it is a hard topic for people to get their head around. And I think obviously we can look at it at a textbook way and try to explain exactly, like, I even fumble a little bit when I'm trying to explain what intersectionality is, because it is a very confusing thing to explain. But I think if people can just understand that you have an identity, and sometimes you have multiple identities, and that affects the way you move through life. And if we can just leave this podcast being conscious of that, when, I think Fab, you said it to me earlier, when people act a different way to you for some reason, or you can't quite see their point of view, why are they acting like this? Think about it, like, maybe think about their, I guess, worldview, and yeah, I think just as long as we all in the back of our minds have it, that, like, diversity and inclusion should be the main priority in any sphere of life, social, political, whatever it is, I think we can just move forward with that and go from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a very relevant topic, I think, nowadays, and everybody should know. That's why we are talking about that today, and I hope you guys liked and are more informed about what is intersectionality.
We'll also be doing a lot of Insta Lives and a lot of podcasts in the week to come. If you guys are still confused about it, you can come and find us in the common room. We're there every Monday. We'll be having a lot of Insta Lives. You guys can ask us questions. So yeah, it's just about, I think this is the first podcast about creating the conversation. Maybe it didn't clear everything up. Maybe it didn't explain everything 100%. But I think this is the start of the conversation. And our whole team is here all the time to continue it and also to respond to any queries you guys might have.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thanks for listening, guys.